The invitation arrived by encrypted messenger on a humid evening in Dubai in March 2021. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a veteran Middle East analyst who had spent 2 decades tracking the region's diplomatic labyrinth, stared at the message with disbelief. A senior Emirati official, someone she had known since the Oslo years, was requesting an urgent private meeting. The location he suggested was not a discreet cafe or embassy safe room, but the gleaming observation deck of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. When they met the following evening, the city sprawling endlessly below them, he handed her a folder without preamble. Inside were photographs, flight logs, and meeting transcripts that documented something extraordinary. For nearly 15 years, while the world focused on the public theater of Arab-Israeli animosity, a shadow network had been operating in complete secrecy. Israeli defense ministers had been flying to Abu Dhabi in unmarked jets. Mossad operatives had been sharing intelligence files with Emirati counterparts. Saudi pilots had been training alongside Israeli instructors at undisclosed desert facilities. "What you are seeing," the official said quietly, "is the death of the old Middle East. Everything you think you know about this region's alliances is already history." What she discovered in that folder would challenge every assumption about Middle Eastern geopolitics that had guided Western policy for 7 decades. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, were not a diplomatic breakthrough born of American shuttle diplomacy. They were the public unveiling of a transformation that had been happening in the shadows for years. Israel had not simply survived in its hostile neighborhood. It had systematically rewired the region's power dynamics, converting sworn enemies into indispensable partners. This was not the Middle East that appeared in newspaper headlines or State Department briefings. This was a parallel universe where ideology had quietly surrendered to pragmatism, where shared threats had overcome historical grievances, where the small state that was supposed to remain isolated had become the region's ultimate kingmaker. The fundamental misreading. When Western observers analyze the Middle East, they consistently apply the wrong framework. They see the region through the lens of identity, religion, and historical grievance. They expect Arab states to maintain eternal hostility toward Israel because of Palestinian suffering, because of Islamic solidarity, because of pan-Arab nationalism. They read every conflict as an extension of the Israeli-Palestinian dispute, every alliance as a sectarian calculation. But what if this entire framework is obsolete? What if the Middle East has moved beyond the paradigms that Western analysts still use to decode it? The first clue came in 2010, during the Arab Spring upheavals that Washington viewed as a democratic awakening. While American officials celebrated the overthrow of traditional autocrats, their Israeli counterparts watched with horror. They saw something the West had missed entirely. The collapse of stable, secular dictatorships was not creating space for democracy. It was creating space for chaos, for Iranian proxies, for jihadi networks that posed existential threats to every established government in the region. Israel understood what was coming because Israel had been living with these threats for decades. When ISIS began beheading journalists and burning prisoners alive, when Hezbollah accumulated 150,000 rockets pointed at Israeli cities, when Iranian Revolutionary Guards established bases from Damascus to Sana'a, Arab leaders quietly began asking themselves an uncomfortable question: which poses a greater threat to our survival, Israeli settlements or Iranian hegemony? The answer would reshape the entire region. The iron catalyst. The transformation was not driven by love for Israel. It was driven by fear of Iran. As Tehran expanded its influence through proxy militias in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, Arab governments found themselves facing a creeping encirclement. The Islamic Republic was not just building nuclear weapons. It was building a Shia crescent of control that threatened to strangle Sunni Arab power. In this new calculus, Israel's decades of experience fighting Iranian proxies became an asset, not a liability. When Hezbollah rockets rained down on Israeli cities in 2006, Israeli intelligence mapped every launch site, every weapons cache, every command structure in southern Lebanon. When Hamas tunnels threatened Israeli communities in Gaza, Israeli military engineers developed underground detection systems that could identify subterranean threats kilometers away. This was exactly the kind of expertise that Arab rulers needed. Iran was using the same playbook against them: proxy, militias, tunnel networks, rocket arsenals, asymmetric warfare designed to slowly strangle conventional militaries. Israel had been developing countermeasures for 30 years. The relationship began with intelligence sharing. Israeli satellites tracked Iranian arms shipments moving through Syria. Israeli cyber units mapped Iranian command networks. Israeli analysts provided threat assessments to Gulf security services. In return, Arab intelligence agencies shared human assets, financial networks, and regional insights that even Mossad could not access. But intelligence cooperation was only the beginning. As Iranian influence expanded, Arab states found themselves needing military capabilities they did not possess. How do you intercept ballistic missiles? How do you neutralize drone swarms? How do you protect critical infrastructure from cyber attacks? Israel had developed answers to all these questions through decades of necessity. The network effect. What emerged was not traditional diplomacy, but something far more sophisticated. A multi-layered network of cooperation that operated below the threshold of public visibility. Military coordination happened through third-party exercises. Technology transfers occurred through private defense contractors. Intelligence sharing moved through informal channels that left no official fingerprints. The genius of this system was its deniability. Arab leaders could maintain their public opposition to Israeli policies while quietly benefiting from Israeli expertise. They could condemn settlements in international forums while their security services coordinated with Israeli counterparts against common threats. This compartmentalization allowed both sides to manage their domestic political constraints while pursuing their strategic interests. But the network was more than just security cooperation. Israel offered something that no other regional power could provide: access to global markets, advanced technology, and Western political influence. Israeli companies could help Arab states diversify their economies beyond oil. Israeli startups could provide the technological infrastructure for smart cities and digital governance. Israeli political connections could influence American policy in ways that benefited the entire anti-Iranian coalition. For Arab states facing the dual challenges of post-oil economic transition and Iranian encroachment, Israel represented a solution to both problems simultaneously. This was not about making peace with an enemy. This was about gaining a partner whose capabilities perfectly complemented their needs. The Palestine bypass. The most remarkable aspect of this transformation was how it simply bypassed the Palestinian issue that had supposedly been the core of the Arab-Israeli conflict for 70 years. Palestinian leaders assumed that Arab solidarity would prevent any separate peace. They were wrong. When existential interests were at stake, solidarity became a luxury that Arab states could no longer afford. The Palestinian leadership had misunderstood their own strategic position. They assumed they were the key that unlocked Arab-Israeli normalization. In reality, they had become the lock that prevented it. As long as the Palestinian issue remained unresolved, Arab states were constrained from pursuing their strategic interests. The breakthrough came when Arab leaders realized they could pursue those interests without waiting for Palestinian consent. This did not mean abandoning the Palestinians entirely, but it did mean that Palestinian aspirations would no longer serve as a veto over Arab strategic decision-making. The tail would no longer wag the dog. The new equilibrium. Today's Middle East operates on fundamentally different principles than the one that existed even a decade ago. Military capabilities matter more than ideological purity. Technological sophistication matters more than religious solidarity. Shared threats matter more than historical grievances. In this new landscape, Israel's survival skills have become its greatest strategic asset. The old Middle East was organized around the Arab-Israeli conflict. The new Middle East is organized around the Iranian threat. Israel has successfully positioned itself as the indispensable partner in confronting that threat, transforming from regional pariah to regional kingmaker in the span of a single generation. This transformation is irreversible. The security partnerships, economic relationships, and intelligence networks that now bind Israel to its former enemies cannot be easily unwound. Too many interests are now aligned. Too many investments have been made. Too many shared secrets have been exchanged. The Middle East that Washington still imagines, where Arab states can be pressured to isolate Israel over Palestinian grievances, no longer exists. In its place is a new regional order where Israel sits at the center of an anti-Iranian coalition that includes the Arab world's most powerful states. The small state that was supposed to remain eternally isolated has instead become the region's most connected player. Understanding this transformation is crucial for anyone seeking to comprehend modern Middle Eastern politics. The old maps are obsolete. The old alliances have been redrawn, and Israel, having mastered the art of survival in the world's most dangerous neighborhood, has emerged not as a victim of regional hostility, but as the architect of regional realignment. The Kingmaker's crown fits perfectly.